My wife smirked. "I've been sleeping with the neighbor for years." I smiled back, then handed her divorce papers, citing infidelity, when she realized she was losing everything due to our prenup. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. Mine was practically frozen. I never planned to get divorced. Hell, I never planned to get married in the first place. But life has a way of surprising you, sometimes pleasantly, sometimes like a sucker punch to the gut. I met Catherine at an auction 12 years ago. I was there representing my firm. She was on the organizing committee. Beautiful, sophisticated, sharp as a tack. The kind of woman who commands attention without asking for it. We were married within 18 months, which my friends thought was fast. Turns out, it wasn't nearly fast enough. My family has money, old money as they say. Not private jet rich, but never worry about bills comfortable. I've worked hard to earn my own success as an attorney, but I can't deny the advantages I started with. Catherine came from more modest means, daughter of a school teacher and a nurse. This detail becomes important later. Before we married, my father insisted on a prenuptial agreement. He wasn't being elitist, he'd just seen too many family fortunes decimated by divorce. "It's just business," he said. "If she truly loves you, she'll understand." Catherine balked initially, but eventually signed. The terms were straightforward. In case of divorce, each keeps what they brought in, plus half of what we earned together. Unless there was infidelity, in which case, the cheating spouse got nothing but their personal effects and a one-time payment of $50,000. Fortunately for me, our state is one of the few that explicitly allows lifestyle clauses in prenuptial agreements, including penalties for infidelity. My father's attorney ensured the document was ironclad under state law, with specific language that had been upheld in previous cases in our jurisdiction. She called it the fidelity clause, and laughed about it. "As if I'd ever cheat on you," she'd said, signing with a flourish. "This thing will never come into play anyway." For 10 years, we had what I thought was a good marriage. We traveled, built a beautiful home, established ourselves in our community. We tried for kids, but it never happened. Doctors said it was unexplained infertility, one of those cruel mysteries of biology. It was hard, but we moved forward, focusing on our careers and each other. Or so I thought. Looking back, the signs were there, if I'd been willing to see them. The sudden interest in fitness, the new wardrobe, the girls' nights that ran suspiciously late, the text messages she'd hide when I walked into a room. Classic stuff, really. But I trusted her. Completely. Blindly. Our neighbor David moved in about 5 years ago. Divorced guy, early 40s, the type who runs triathlons and renovates houses for fun. Catherine was immediately friendly, bringing over welcome baskets, inviting him for dinner. I thought nothing of it. That's just who she was. Outgoing, welcoming. I even suggested he join our neighborhood poker night. That's how clueless I was. Things might have continued indefinitely if not for what I call the incident. 3 months ago, I came home early from a business trip. Flight canceled due to mechanical issues, and rather than wait for the next one, I rented a car and drove the 4 hours home. I wanted to surprise Catherine, maybe take her to dinner. The surprise, as it turned out, was all mine. I pulled into our driveway around 3 p.m. Catherine's car was there, which was unexpected. She should have been at her part-time gallery job. She'd left her full-time position 2 years ago to focus on painting, but still maintained part-time hours at a local art gallery. David's Jeep was in his driveway next door. I entered quietly, hearing music coming from upstairs. I thought maybe she'd taken the day off, was relaxing in a bath or something. I'll spare you the cliché details. Suffice it to say, I found my wife and my neighbor in our bed, in a position that left no room for innocent explanation. They didn't notice me at first. I simply closed the door and walked back downstairs. Poured myself a scotch, neat, and waited. 20 minutes later, Catherine came downstairs. She'd showered, changed into casual clothes. She stopped dead when she saw me sitting in the living room. "James, you're home early." Her voice was steady, but I could see the calculations happening behind her eyes. Had I seen? Did I know? Should she confess or bluff? I sipped my scotch. Flight was canceled. Decided to drive back. She nodded, seemingly relieved. "You should have called. I'd have made dinner plans." "Seemed like you already had plans," I said mildly. "Is David staying for dinner too, or did he work up an appetite already?" The color drained from her face. Then, something unexpected happened. Instead of denial or tears, a strange smirk spread across her lips. It was a look I'd never seen from her before. Part defiance, part relief, as if a great burden had been lifted. "Well," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "I suppose the cat's out of the bag." I raised an eyebrow, waiting. "Yes, David and I are involved," she continued, her voice eerily calm. "Have been for years, actually. Years." The word hit like a physical blow. Years of lies, years of deception under my own roof. "I see," was all I could manage. "It just happened," she said, the classic cheater's defense. "We tried to fight it, but there was something there, something I wasn't getting at home." I laughed, couldn't help it. "And what, pray tell, weren't you getting? Financial security? A beautiful home? A husband who adored you?" She frowned. "Passion, James, excitement. David makes me feel alive. And I made you feel comfortable," she said, as if it was the filthiest word in the English language. "Safe." I nodded slowly, finishing my scotch. "Well, I'm glad you found your bliss. How long exactly is years?" She hesitated, then lifted her chin. 4, give or take. 4 years. Almost half our marriage. I stood and walked to the bar cart, pouring another drink. My hands didn't shake, which surprised me. I felt strangely calm, detached almost. "And what's the plan here, Catherine? Were you ever going to tell me, or just continue making a fool of me indefinitely?" She sighed, running a hand through her hair. "Honestly, I don't know. It's complicated. David wants me to leave you, but you're reluctant to give up the financial security." I finished for her. "Understandable. Love may make the world go round, but money pays for the tickets." Her eyes flashed with anger. "It's not about money, isn't it?" I turned to face her fully. "Let me guess. David's passionate and exciting, but his personal trainer salary doesn't quite match up to a partner at a law firm. Difficult choice." "You're being cruel," she said quietly. "No," I replied. "I'm being accurate. There's a difference." We stood there in silence for a long moment, the weight of her confession hanging between us. Then I smiled, a genuine smile that seemed to catch her off guard. "Actually, you've made this very simple for me." I walked to my briefcase, which I dropped by the door when I came in. I extracted a thick manila envelope and held it out to her. "What's this?" she asked, not taking it. "Divorce papers," I said calmly, citing infidelity as the cause. Her eyes widened. "You already had divorce papers drawn up? How? You just found out?" "I've suspected for some time," I lied smoothly. "Today just confirmed it. My lawyer had these prepared as a contingency." This was completely untrue. I hadn't suspected a thing until walking in on them. The envelope actually contained tax documents I'd brought home to review. But she didn't need to know that. The bluff served its purpose in that moment, to show her I wouldn't be manipulated or begged into reconciliation. Catherine took the envelope hesitantly, as if it might burn her fingers. "James, we should talk about this. Maybe counseling." "No need," I cut her off. "You've been sleeping with our neighbor for 4 years. There's nothing to discuss or salvage. But the house, our assets." She stopped suddenly, realization dawning on her face. "The prenup." I nodded, allowing myself another small smile. "The prenup, with its very specific fidelity clause that you found so amusing when you signed it." The blood drained from her face completely. "That's not fair. We've built a life together for 10 years. And you've been destroying it for the last 4, I replied evenly. "Actions have consequences, Catherine. You made your choice. Actually, you made it thousands of times, every time you slept with him." "I'll fight it," she said, voice hardening. "I'll say I signed under duress." "You can try. Your signature is on every page, witnessed by your own attorney who advised you to sign it. There's also a notarized statement from your lawyer confirming you understood all terms and signed voluntarily." This was true. My father had insisted on maximum legal protection. She sank onto the couch, envelope clutched in her hands. "So that's it? 10 years and I walk away with nothing?" "Not nothing," I corrected. $50,000 and your personal belongings, as agreed. That's barely 6 months of living expenses. You should have thought of that before playing house with David. I'm sure he'll help you out. After all, he makes you feel alive." She stared at me with a mixture of shock and fury. "You can't just throw me out. I need time to—" "You have 30 days, I interrupted. "I'll be staying at the Marriott downtown until you're gone. The house will be sold, with my share of the proceeds going to a foundation for infertility research. A decision I'd just made in that moment, but it felt right. "I don't have to leave. This is my home too," she said, a calculating look replacing her shock. I nodded. "You're right. Legally, I can't force you out of our marital home without a court order. But I'm willing to cover the security deposit and first month's rent on a new place for you if you agree to move out peacefully within 30 days. Otherwise, we can let the courts handle it, which will drag things out, cost us both more in legal fees, and likely end with the same result, your choice." The practical reality of her situation seemed to sink in. She knew the prenup was solid. Her leverage was limited. "You're enjoying this," she accused, tears finally starting to well. I considered this. Was I enjoying it? Not exactly, but I wasn't crushed either. Mostly I felt liberated. "No, Catherine, I'm simply enforcing a contract you willingly signed. You gambled and lost." I picked up my briefcase again. "I'll call my attorney tomorrow and have her prepare the actual divorce papers. I'll have my assistant arrange for me to collect some belongings tomorrow when you're at work. Please let me know your decision about the 30-day arrangement by then." As I headed for the door, she called after me. "You'll regret this, James. I'll make sure everyone knows what a cold, heartless bastard you are." I paused, hand on the doorknob. "Be my guest. Just remember, the same people who will hear about my cold heart will also hear about your warm bed with the neighbor. For 4 years. That shut her up. The next morning I called Helen, my firm's divorce specialist. I explained the situation, and by that afternoon, she had prepared the actual divorce filing, citing infidelity. Catherine accepted the 30-day move-out arrangement, likely realizing it was the most practical option. The next few weeks were predictably chaotic. Catherine launched a full offensive, calling my parents, mutual friends, even clients of my firm, painting herself as the victim of a controlling husband who'd driven her into another man's arms. Few bought it, especially when the 4-year timeline came to light. She found a lawyer willing to challenge the prenup, arguing it was unconscionable and contrary to public policy. Helen, a barracuda in a pantsuit, shut that down in record time. The judge took one look at the evidence, including text messages between Catherine and David found on our shared iPad that she'd forgotten about, all legally obtained, and upheld every word of our agreement. Catherine's final gambit was attempting to destroy my reputation professionally. She showed up at a firm event, scene-makingly drunk, shouting about my supposed sexual inadequacies to anyone who would listen. My managing partner, a 60-something woman who'd survived 3 divorces of her own, personally escorted Catherine to a taxi, patted my shoulder, and said, "Take a week off, James. We've all been there." In the end, Catherine got exactly what the prenup specified, $50,000 and her personal effects. The house sold quickly, and true to my word, I donated my share to infertility research. I bought a smaller place downtown, walking distance to my office. I heard through the grapevine that Catherine moved in with David, but that blissful arrangement lasted all of 2 months before imploding spectacularly at a neighborhood barbecue where she discovered he was also sleeping with a yoga instructor from his gym. Karma works in mysterious ways. It's been a year now. The divorce is long finalized, the drama faded to occasional whispers. I'm dating again, cautiously. I've made it clear to anyone who might become serious that I'll require an even more ironclad prenup if marriage ever comes up. Some find this off-putting. I find it sensible. People ask if I regret enforcing the prenup so harshly. Couldn't I have been more generous, given the length of our marriage? Perhaps. But as I see it, Catherine made a clear-eyed decision every day for 4 years to violate our most fundamental agreement. The prenup was just the codification of that broken trust. Why should betrayal be rewarded with generosity? The strangest part of this whole ordeal? I'm genuinely happier now, not despite losing my marriage, but because of it. I lost a wife, but I gained clarity about what I want, who I can trust, and how resilient I truly am. As for Catherine, last I heard, she's working at a real estate office in a town 40 miles away, starting over. Part of me hopes she finds whatever she was looking for with David. The larger part simply doesn't think about her at all anymore. They say living well is the best revenge. They're right. But having a solid prenuptial agreement comes in a close second. Edit. Since this blew up overnight, I'll answer some common questions. Yes, the prenup was completely valid and enforceable in our state. Both parties had separate counsel, there was full financial disclosure, and it was signed well in advance of the wedding. Lifestyle clauses, including infidelity penalties, are specifically upheld by precedent in our jurisdiction. That's why her challenge failed so quickly. No, I don't feel guilty about leaving her with nothing. She had a lucrative career of her own but chose to leave it 2 years ago to focus on her painting, while maintaining part-time work at a gallery. Her lack of current income was her choice, not my problem. To the folks suggesting I somehow drove her to cheat by being emotionally unavailable, A, you know nothing about our relationship dynamics, and B, if she was unhappy, she could have communicated that or left. Cheating was a choice, not an inevitability. For those asking about David, he sold his house and moved shortly after their breakup. I couldn't care less where he went. And yes, I've had a full STD panel done. All clear, thankfully. Thanks for all the support from those who've been through similar situations. It does get better. Update, 3 months later. Since many have asked for an update, here's where things stand now. The professional fallout from Catherine's scene at the firm event was minimal. If anything, my stock rose among the partners for handling it with dignity. I've since been put in charge of our newest high-profile client, which would never have happened if there were lingering concerns about my personal life affecting my work. On the personal front, I've continued seeing Claire. The woman I mentioned was in my life. She's a pediatric surgeon, divorced herself after her ex-husband developed a gambling problem he hid until they were nearly bankrupt. We understand each other's caution and respect each other's boundaries. It's refreshing to be with someone who values honesty above all else. The most surprising development came last month when I received an email from Catherine. It was unexpectedly humble, an apology without excuses or justifications. She acknowledged the pain she'd caused and accepted full responsibility for her choices. No attempts to extract money or sympathy, just a simple recognition of wrongdoing and a wish for my happiness going forward. I later heard through mutual friends that after things imploded with David, Catherine had hit rock bottom and sought therapy. Apparently, the professional help led to some genuine self-reflection. I sat with that email for several days before responding. Part of me wondered if it was the prelude to some new manipulation, but it didn't read that way. Eventually, I sent a brief but civil reply thanking her for the apology and wishing her well in her new life. Was it closure? Perhaps. I've come to believe that true closure doesn't come from any external source, not from apologies, revenge, or even time. It comes from within, from the decision to close that chapter and move forward unburdened. The question I get most often these days is whether I'll ever trust enough to marry again. The honest answer is, I don't know. Trust, once shattered, doesn't reassemble with the same pattern. The cracks remain visible if you look closely enough, but new materials can be stronger at the broken places, as they say. What I do know is that I'm no longer defining my life by what happened with Catherine. That story, our story, has ended. The next chapters are unwritten, and for the first time in a long while, I'm genuinely curious to see where the narrative goes. Life rarely gives us what we expect. Sometimes it gives us far less, sometimes surprisingly more. The only constant is change, and the only control we have is how we respond to it. As for me, I'm responding by living well, loving cautiously, and keeping my legal documents in impeccable order. Some lessons you only need to learn once. My wife texted, "I'm divorcing you. I'm taking the house, the kids, and your car." I replied, "Noted." Then I emailed her lawyer the nanny cam footage of her affair and the audio recordings of her coaching the kids. Her lawyer's urgent settlement offer 10 minutes later. Posted this in a few other subs, but figured this crowd would appreciate the full breakdown of how my soon-to-be ex-wife tried to destroy my life and ended up nuking her own instead. Background first. Married to Linda for 9 years, 2 kids, Emma age 7 and Jake age 5. I'm an electrical engineer for a defense contractor. Good steady income around $120 a year. Linda was a nurse when we met, but quit when Emma was born. Been a stay-at-home mom ever since, which honestly I was fine with. Kids need attention and daycare costs are insane anyway. Now Linda's always been what you'd call high maintenance, designer everything. Expensive gym memberships, weekly salon appointments, monthly spa days, the works. I didn't mind supporting that lifestyle as long as she was handling the home front and we weren't going into debt. But about 18 months ago, things started changing. Linda got involved with this group of divorced women from her yoga studio. Real toxic crowd. Always talking about how their ex-husbands were controlling losers who held them back from their true potential. How they deserved better treatment and bigger divorce settlements. Linda started parroting their talking points. Suddenly I was emotionally unavailable. I didn't appreciate her sacrifices. I was using financial control to manipulate her. All this therapy speak she'd never used before. I tried addressing it directly. Asked if she was unhappy with our marriage. If there were specific things she wanted to change, she'd flip it back on me. Said the fact that I was questioning her feelings proved how dismissive I was of her emotional needs. Classic gaslighting stuff, but I didn't recognize it at the time. Around the same time, she started getting secretive with her phone, taking it everywhere, keeping it face down during dinner, getting irritated if I walked by while she was texting. When I mentioned it, she said I was being paranoid and controlling. Then came the accusations about the kids. Linda started claiming I was too strict with them, that I was damaging their self-esteem with my expectations, that they were scared of disappointing daddy and it was affecting their emotional development. This was complete nonsense. I've always been involved with Emma and Jake. I coach Jake's little league team. I help Emma with her homework every night. We do science projects together on weekends. The kids and I have a great relationship. But Linda kept pushing this narrative. She'd bring up incidents where I'd supposedly been too harsh. Like the time I told Emma she couldn't have ice cream until she finished her vegetables. Or when I made Jake apologize for hitting his sister. Normal parenting stuff that she was reframing as emotional abuse. I started recording our conversations about the kids. Our state is a one-party consent state, so I could legally record conversations I was part of. Just to have accurate records of what was actually said, because she'd constantly misrepresent our discussions later. Linda would claim I agreed to things I never agreed to, or that I'd said things I never said. Having recordings helped me keep track of reality when she was constantly trying to rewrite history. The recording setup expanded after a particularly nasty fight about discipline. Linda accused me of screaming at Jake over homework when I'd actually just asked him to focus. She was so convincing in her outrage that I started doubting my own memory. That's when I decided to document everything. Voice-activated recorders in common areas. Nanny cams in the kids' rooms and playroom. Not to spy on Linda initially. Just to have objective records of interactions with the kids in case this co-parenting narrative continued escalating. Good thing I did because it escalated fast. About 6 months ago, Linda started having emergencies that required me to watch the kids on short notice. Suddenly, her book club was running late. Her yoga class got extended. Her mom needed help with something urgent, always apologetic about the timing, but somehow these emergencies happened every time I had plans. I didn't mind adjusting my schedule for legitimate emergencies, but the pattern was suspicious. Especially since Linda never had details about these situations when I asked follow-up questions. The nanny cam started picking up interesting footage during these emergency absences. Linda would drop the kids off at her sister's house, then disappear for hours. She'd come home looking like she'd been somewhere nice, hair freshly styled, makeup touched up, different clothes than when she left. When I'd ask how her mom was doing or how book club went, she'd give vague answers. Tired, ran long, nothing interesting to report. But the timestamps on the cameras showed she'd only been home 20 minutes when these activities supposedly ended hours ago. I started tracking her location through Find My iPhone. I know some people think that's invasive, but we both agreed to share locations for safety after a friend of ours got in a car accident. Linda knew I could see her location just like I could see hers. The location data told the story. During her emergencies, Linda was spending time at this apartment complex across town. Same building every time, usually 2 to 3 hours at a stretch. I did some digging and found out the complex was where Brad Morrison lived. Brad's this divorced dad from Jake's little league team, recently separated from his wife after she caught him cheating. Real smooth talker, always flirting with the moms during games. Now I had a timeline and a location, but I needed proof. So I started being more strategic about the recording setup. I put a voice-activated recorder in Linda's car. Since it's a one-party consent state and my name is on the registration, I was within my legal rights. I wanted to know what conversations she was having during these mysterious trips. The car recordings were enlightening. Phone calls with Brad talking about when they could meet up, discussions about hotels versus his apartment, complaints about having to make excuses to get away from me and the kids. But the really damaging stuff was what she said about me and the children. Linda was telling Brad that I was an absent father who ignored the kids unless she forced me to interact with them. That Emma and Jake were scared of me because I had anger management issues. That she was documenting my behavior to build a custody case. None of this was true, but she was saying it with such conviction that Brad was giving her advice on divorce lawyers and custody strategies. The worst part was hearing her coach the kids. I'd suspected something was off about their recent behavior around me, but the recordings confirmed it. Linda would wait until I was at work, then sit down with Emma and Jake for what she called feeling talks. She'd ask leading questions about times Daddy had been mean to them, about whether they felt safe when Mommy wasn't around. If they said everything was fine, she'd redirect. But remember when Daddy raised his voice about your room being messy? How did that make you feel? She'd keep pushing until they gave her the emotional response she wanted. Even worse, she was teaching them to repeat simple phrases when asked about Daddy. Daddy was mean. I don't like when Daddy yells. Mommy is nice to me. Simple statements that young kids could remember and repeat. She was literally training my children to give negative responses about me to support her custody case. I documented everything. Timestamps, audio files, video footage, built a comprehensive record of Linda's affair and her manipulation of the kids. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wanted to see how far she'd take this before showing my hand. The answer was pretty far. 2 weeks ago, Linda announced she was taking the kids to visit her sister for a long weekend. Said they needed some quality time with their aunt and cousins. I thought it was a good idea. The kids love their cousins, and Linda had been stressed lately. Except the location tracking showed she never went to her sister's house. She spent the weekend at a resort 2 hours away, where Brad was also staying, based on his social media posts. She dropped the kids off with her sister Friday morning, told them Mommy had errands to run, then disappeared until Sunday afternoon to pick them up. When they got back on Sunday, the kids were acting weird. Clingy with Linda. Distant with me. Emma wouldn't make eye contact during dinner. Jake kept asking if Daddy was mad at them. That night, after the kids were in bed, Linda sat me down for a conversation. She said the weekend had been enlightening. That Emma and Jake had opened up about feeling uncomfortable at home. That they'd expressed concerns about my parenting style. She had notes, specific quotes supposedly from the kids about incidents I didn't remember. Times I'd allegedly made them cry. Occasions when they'd felt unsafe because of my temper. I asked to talk to the kids directly about these concerns. Linda said that would be traumatic for them. That they needed space to process their feelings before having difficult conversations with me. Red flags everywhere, but I played along. Asked what she thought we should do to address the kids' concerns. That's when Linda showed her cards. She said maybe we needed to consider separation. That the kids might benefit from some time away from the tension at home. She'd already talked to a lawyer about custody arrangements that would prioritize the children's emotional well-being. I told her I thought we should try counseling first. Both couples therapy and family to work through whatever issues the kids were experiencing. Linda said she wasn't interested in counseling. That she'd already made up her mind about what was best for our family. I asked if there was someone else. If her decision to leave was motivated by wanting to be with another person. She looked me right in the eye and said no. Said this was about protecting herself and the children from an unhealthy environment. The audacity was incredible. She was gaslighting me while planning to take my kids based on lies she'd coached them to tell. But I still didn't reveal what I knew. I wanted her to commit fully to her plan before exposing the truth. Last Monday, I got the text that ended our marriage. I'm divorcing you. I'm taking the house, the kids, and your car. Don't try to contact me directly. All communication goes through my lawyer from now on. Linda. Just like that. 9 years of marriage ended with a text message full of demands. I replied exactly what the title says. Noted. Then I got to work. First, I called my own lawyer, guy named Robert Chen, who specializes in high-conflict custody cases. Expensive, but worth every penny. I'd already consulted with him months ago when Linda's behavior started escalating, so he was familiar with the situation. I sent Robert everything: audio files, video footage, location data, text message screenshots, bank records showing charges at hotels during Linda's alleged emergencies. The whole comprehensive file I'd been building. Robert reviewed everything and confirmed what I already knew. Linda had torpedoed her own custody case with the coaching recordings. Family courts don't look kindly on parental alienation, especially when there's clear audio evidence of a parent manipulating children to lie about abuse. But Robert wanted to go further. He suggested we also gather evidence of Linda's affair for the divorce proceedings. Adultery affects property division in our state. If we could prove she'd been unfaithful while using marital assets to fund the relationship, it would impact her claims on the house and other assets. I already had most of what we needed. Location data, hotel receipts, phone records, photos from Brad's social media showing them together at restaurants I'd never been to. But Robert wanted something definitive, something that would be undeniable in court. That's where Linda's own digital trail came in handy. She'd been careless with her phone and computer. Text messages talking about meeting Brad. Calendar entries for appointments that lined up with her location data. Even photos she'd taken at restaurants and hotels with Brad that she'd forgotten to delete. Most damaging was a series of emails she'd sent to her divorce lawyer friend asking for advice on maximizing custody and asset claims. The emails detailed her strategy of documenting false abuse incidents and coaching the kids to support her narrative. She'd basically confessed her entire plan in writing. Robert prepared a comprehensive evidence package: affair documentation, parental alienation recordings, financial records showing Linda's misuse of marital funds, character witness statements from neighbors and the kids' teachers who could testify about my relationship with Emma and Jake. Then Robert reached out to Linda's lawyer. Linda had hired this woman named Patricia Hoffman, known for aggressive tactics and maximizing settlements for female clients. Probably cost Linda a fortune in retainer fees based on her reputation. Robert's initial contact was professional, just a courtesy call to introduce himself and discuss discovery timelines. No mention of our evidence. Patricia immediately came out swinging, demanded that I move out of the family home immediately. Insisted that all visitation with the kids be supervised until a custody evaluation could be completed. Made it clear they were planning to portray me as an unfit father with anger issues. Robert listened politely, then asked if Patricia might want to review some evidence before filing formal motions. Patricia said she wasn't interested in whatever character witnesses or financial records we thought were relevant. That family court was about protecting children, not relitigating marital grievances. That's when Robert dropped the first bomb. He mentioned we had audio recordings of Linda coaching the kids to make false statements about abuse, that we could prove she'd been manipulating them to support her custody claims. Patricia's tone changed immediately. She asked for specifics about the recordings, when they were made, what exactly Linda had said. Robert provided a few sample quotes, nothing too detailed, but enough to show we had genuine evidence of parental alienation. Patricia asked for time to review the materials with her client before proceeding with any formal filings. Robert agreed, but mentioned we also had evidence relevant to property division. That Linda's claims about deserving the house might be complicated by other factors. When Patricia asked what kind of factors, Robert said we had documented proof of adultery during the marriage, including intimate encounters in the family home, using marital assets to fund the affair. The line went quiet for almost 30 seconds. Patricia asked if we'd be willing to discuss settlement options before involving the court system. Robert said we were always open to reasonable discussions that prioritized the children's best interests. They scheduled a call for the next day to review our evidence and discuss terms. That was Tuesday afternoon. Over the next 2 weeks, my phone was periodically blowing up with calls from Linda. I didn't answer. Let them all go to voicemail. The messages started panicked and got progressively more desperate over the following days. Linda crying about how she'd made a mistake, how we could work things out if I just talked to her, how the kids needed both their parents. After a week, she was begging me to call off the lawyers, promising she'd go to counseling, saying she'd do anything to save our marriage. Too little, too late. 2 weeks after the initial lawyer contact, Patricia called Robert with what she described as an urgent settlement proposal. Linda would accept a 50-50 custody split with no restrictions on my parenting time. She'd move out of the family home and take only her personal belongings. She'd waive any claim to alimony or spousal support. She'd accept a minimal property settlement that basically amounted to half the value of her car and her personal jewelry. In exchange, we'd agree not to introduce evidence of adultery or parental alienation in court proceedings. All custody and property issues would be resolved through private mediation rather than public trial. Robert said he'd discuss the offer with his client and get back to her. When Robert called me with Patricia's proposal, I almost laughed. Linda had gone from demanding everything to accepting essentially nothing in the span of 48 hours. But I wasn't interested in being generous, not after what she'd put me and the kids through. I told Robert I wanted primary custody, with Linda getting supervised visitation until she completed parenting classes and individual therapy. I wanted the house and all marital assets except for Linda's personal items and half the value of one car. Most importantly, I wanted Linda to sign a detailed admission of her coaching behavior and agree to immediate therapy for both kids to address the damage she'd caused. Robert thought my counterproposal was harsh, but legally defensible given our evidence. He called Patricia the following Monday with our terms. Patricia tried to negotiate, but Robert was clear. These were our final terms. If Linda didn't accept them, we'd proceed with a contested divorce and full custody battle where all our evidence would become public record, including the email confessions. Patricia asked for time to discuss the terms with her client. That Wednesday, Patricia called back accepting our complete proposal. Linda signed the initial agreements Friday morning. The formal custody arrangement would take another few weeks to finalize through the court system, but the temporary custody order gave me primary physical custody immediately. She moved out of the house that weekend while I took the kids to my parents. Her sister came with a moving truck to collect her belongings. By Sunday evening, the immediate transition was complete. The kids asked where Mommy went. I told them she was going to live in a different house for a while, but they'd still get to see her regularly. That sometimes families need to make changes, but it doesn't mean anyone loves them less. Emma asked if it was because they'd been bad. That broke my heart because it showed how much Linda's coaching had messed with their heads. I assured both kids that nothing was their fault, that Mommy and Daddy both loved them very much, but sometimes grown-ups need to live separately, that we'd all work together to make sure they felt safe and loved, no matter what. The first supervised visit happened 3 weeks later, after the court had time to process the temporary orders and arrange proper supervision. Court-appointed supervisor at a family center downtown. Linda tried to act like nothing had changed, but the kids were confused and distant. Emma kept asking why someone else was watching them play with Mommy. Jake wanted to know when they could come home with me. Linda's going to have to rebuild those relationships from scratch. And she's going to have to do it while dealing with the consequences of her choices. Brad dumped her as soon as word got around about the divorce proceedings. Apparently, he wasn't interested in being with someone who came with this much legal drama. So much for true love. Linda's moved into a studio apartment across town. Her sister's been helping with basic furniture and necessities. From what I hear, she's struggling financially without access to our joint accounts. She started therapy, but from the kids' reports, she spends most of their supervised visits complaining about how unfair everything is. How daddy tricked her with hidden cameras. How the system is biased against women. Zero accountability for her own choices. The kids are doing better, though. Emma's back to her normal, cheerful self. Jake's sleeping through the night again. Both of them seem relieved to be living in a stable environment without the constant tension. We've started family therapy to address any lingering effects from Linda's coaching. The therapist says kids are remarkably resilient when they feel secure. That the most important thing is maintaining consistent routines and clear communication. I've been completely honest with Emma and Jake about the changes in our family. Age-appropriate but honest. They know Mommy made some poor choices that hurt our family. That she's working on becoming a better person, but it's going to take time. They also know that none of this was their fault and that both parents love them even when we can't live together. The legal situation is almost wrapped up. Divorce should be finalized within the next 2 months. Custody arrangement is working smoothly. Property division will be complete once all the paperwork goes through. Robert says Linda's lawyer bill was probably north of $50,000 for a case that lasted less than 2 weeks. Patricia billed premium rates for what ended up being a complete surrender. My legal costs were substantial too, but worth every penny for the peace of mind. The best part is having my kids back. Emma's volunteering to help with dinner again. Jake's asking me to read bedtime stories. They're both excited about the science fair project we're planning for school. It's like getting my family back after months of walking on eggshells around Linda's manipulation. Looking back, I can see all the signs I missed or rationalized away. The secretive behavior. The constant reframing of normal interactions as problematic. The systematic attempt to alienate me from my own children. Linda had probably been planning this divorce for months while I was trying to save our marriage. The affair was just the icing on the cake. She'd already decided to destroy our family and take everything she could in the process. What she didn't count on was me being smart enough to document her behavior. Most guys in my situation would have been blindsided by the false accusations in coach testimony. By the time they figured out what was happening, their kids would already be traumatized and their reputation would be destroyed. I got lucky that I recognized the gaslighting early enough to start gathering evidence. Without those recordings and camera footage, this could have gone very differently. The key lesson is trust your instincts when someone's behavior doesn't match their words. If your partner is constantly rewriting history or making you question your own memory, start documenting everything. And if you have kids, protect them first. Document any coaching or manipulation immediately. Family courts take parental alienation seriously when there's clear evidence. Linda thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. Turns out I was playing chess too. I just didn't show my pieces until the game was already over. She gambled everything on a strategy that depended on me being passive and naive. When that assumption proved wrong, her entire plan collapsed. Now she gets to live with the consequences while I rebuild my life with my children. Honestly, couldn't have worked out better if I'd planned it myself. The only thing I regret is not recognizing Linda's true character sooner. Could have saved everyone a lot of pain if I'd addressed the red flags when they first appeared. But sometimes people show you who they really are gradually. The mask slips a little at a time until suddenly you're looking at a stranger who happens to share your last name. Linda became someone I didn't recognize over those 18 months. Or maybe she was always that person, and I was just seeing what I wanted to see. Either way, the kids and I are better off without that toxicity in our daily lives. Linda can work on herself during her supervised visits and maybe eventually earn back some trust. But the days of her manipulating my children to hurt me are over. That protection alone makes everything else worth it.